Hello there and welcome back to another video of the Twilight Wars browser app series. Today's video is a special one because it is a faction release, and as you can see here we are releasing the Mentak Coalition. It's been a while since we've had a new faction. I believe the last one was the Ghosts of Creus, but Mentak provided us with some challenges and towards implementation, and in this video we're going to go over all of the faction abilities, technologies, as well as the flagship, describing and illustrating how they work within the app. Before we go into a sample game, we're going to give a brief overview, in particular about a change that Twilight Wars has made to one of the faction abilities. So you can see, actually, if you look at the in-game faction sheet for the Mentak Coalition, similar to when we changed the wording on action cards, we put a little Twilight Wars logo. And I want to first go and read the original text of Ambush, which is what we've changed. So in the original game, the text reads that at the start of a space combat, you may roll one die for each of up to 2 of your cruisers or destroyers in the system. For each result equal to or greater than the ship's combat value, produce 1 hit. Your opponent must assign it to one of their ships. Now, over in the Twilight Wars version, we have at the start of a space combat, you may roll 1 die for 1 of your cruisers or destroyers in the system. For a result equal to or greater than that ship's combat value, your opponent must destroy one of their ships. So what's different here is 2 things. The first is that you're only able to roll 1 die instead of 2. The second is that in the Twilight Wars version, the opponent's going to destroy their ship rather than assign a hit to it. Now, if you recall from the Ghosts of Creus implementation, this is essentially the same as the way Dimensional Splicer was implemented, and it has to do with timing windows and nested timing windows in particular in Twilight Wars, which we try to avoid. So if we were going by the rules written, the opponent would assign a hit, which could mean they could sustain damage, right? And then there gets a whole ability round with direct hits and whatnot. So instead, what we've done is made it that the opponent has to destroy 1 hit. They cannot sustain damage. They just have to flat out destroy it. No ability round for sustained damage, direct hits. Now, obviously, that's a nerf to the person receiving the ambush. So to compensate for this, we've reduced the number of ships from 2 to 1. And yeah, again, the changes were made for timing window purposes. And you could see the same thing for Dimensional Splicer. So that's Ambush. The other faction ability, Pillage, remains the same. So after one of your neighbors gains trade goods or resolves a transaction, if he has 3 or more trade goods, he may take one of his trade goods or commodities. This we thought was going to give us some trouble originally with the implementation. It turns out it's actually not that bad. It was just a lot of tracking down as to where all these possible, instances occur when a player can gain a trade good, because there are a lot. Like, just to kind of point out some examples, okay, you have the obvious case of transactions, but then you have a lot of subtle cases. For example, when the clan of Sar takes a planet, they gain a trade good for each planet via the scavenge ability, right? So you could have the clan of Sar gain 2 trade goods, but these are both individual instances. And so that would actually trigger 2 pillage events. And the way we've done this in the app is it just gets queued up, right? So Clan of Sar takes 2 planets. Their turn gets put on hold while the Mentak player resolves the 2 instances of pillage. What else do we have? We have, there are two technologies: salvage operations and mirror computing. So salvage operations also deals with combat. After you win or lose a space combat, you gain one trade good. If you won the combat, you may also produce one ship in that system of any ship type that was destroyed during the combat. This is actually another interesting case that could relate to Pillage, because if the Necrovirus copy this technology and they use it to gain a trade good, it could potentially activate Pillage. And then mirror computing, when you spend trade goods, each trade good is worth 2 resources or influence instead of 1. Again, this was a matter of tracking down all the places where these things can happen, spending of trade goods. And then finally, we have the flagship, Fourth Moon, which has the ability that other players' ships in the system cannot use sustained damage. So we're going to use this demo game to demonstrate these faction abilities and technologies. So let's see what we got here. In this screen, we're playing as Alice as the clan of Sar, and of course you can see the blue player is the Mentak Coalition. So they are currently neighbors via this border here with the Mentak player. And basically what's going to happen is once they perform this transaction or what have you, that if we perform a transaction here within the app, say because there's this Emirates of Hakan player, so we don't have to be neighbors with them, we're going to do a transaction and see that triggers Pillage. It's a lot to follow, neighbors, non-neighbors, but anyways, I'll queue up a trade here. So I want to trade at the Emirates of Hakan, and let's just say I want to ask for one trade good. I'll send that request over. So going over to the Emirates of Hakan's tab, we'll accept the trade and pay attention to the turn indicator. So we accept the trade. We're now waiting for Charlie to resolve the Pillage ability. So the game is on hold because it is Alice's turn, but we cannot activate a system or use a strategy card until the Pillage ability is resolved. So going over to Charlie's screen, resolve the Pillage ability. Well, the first thing you'll notice is we can actually pass on this if we want. You don't have to pillage, you can negotiate with another player the conditions of which you wouldn't want to pillage, or maybe you're just feeling friendly. But if you do want to pillage, we can see that Alice has 1 commodity and 6 trade goods. And so we have the option to pillage either. So you go on over to your player info tab to where your faction abilities are, and you click pillage. Now you get to choose which type of resource you want to pick. So let's go ahead and take the trade good maybe, or actually let's take the commodity. And now it's back to Alice's turn now that we've resolved Pillage. And in fact, you can see in the game log that Charlie used the Pillage faction ability. So that's Pillage. Alright. Next thing we're going to do is start a space combat so we can demonstrate some of the other abilities. So we're going to invade this system here. As Alice, as the clan of Sar, will activate it. Pass on the ability round. Charlie will pass on the ability round. And then what we'll do is we'll take in the flagship and a fighter. We'll confirm our movement. So, resolve an ability at the start of space combat. Pass on this, Alice. And now, what we have now is an opportunity to use our second faction ability, which is ambush. So we get to roll one die because in this system here, right, we actually have 2 cruisers and 2 destroyers. So we get to roll one die. Now the game will automatically pick the best available ship for you. So in this case, when we click use, ambush being activated, we're just using a cruiser automatically, right? Because, well, the cruiser's combat value is 7, whereas the destroyer's combat value is 9. So add 20% to our likelihood. So with the roll, we check the log, and you can see we actually missed with a 5. Now, had we hit, basically it would go over to Alice, who would be asked to destroy one of their ships. But as it is, let's just go ahead and pass on this ability round. Then we'll perform the anti-fighter barrage. Okay, we miss. Let's not declare retreats. I'll roll dice. So Alice takes 1 hit. And then Charlie will roll. Charlie gets 4 hits, so that's good. So, waiting for Alice to resolve an ability before Alice assigns hits, right? So you'll recall that during this stage of the game, you know, if you just try to pass, the game's going to remind you that you can sustain damage during this timing window. So we'll say, oh, okay, well, I got my flagship here, sorry, up here. I can cancel a hit by sustaining damage. But now you actually get told that you cannot sustain damage. And this is because the 4th moon is in the system. So that's the Mentak flagship coming into play here. So now, of course, we can't sustain damage anymore. So we'll just go ahead and confirm this, sign the hits, confirm, and then Charlie will sustain damage on his 1 hit. Everyone else will pass, pass. Now, resolve an ability after a round of space combat. So we've won the space combat. So, and this is where salvage operations is going to come into effect. Now we can't use it yet because we're still in the after round of space combat. Well, it's Alice's turn rather. So we have to wait till after the combat's over. And now the game automatically takes us into the resolve the salvage operations ability. So it's actually not optional, because it says after you win or lose a space combat, you gain 1 trade good. And if you won the combat, you may also produce 1 ship in that system for any tip that was destroyed. So what was destroyed was the flagship and the fighter, right? So to use salvage operations, you double click the technology. And now let's say, we try to build another type of ship. We can't produce a dreadnought, for example, because the ship wasn't destroyed during the combat. Can't produce a flagship either. Well, in theory. Okay, hold on a sec. So a little bit of an issue here. Just reload the page. Bit of a real-time bug that we'll have to clean up there. So, okay, now we're back to where we need to be. So can't make a dreadnought, but we could make a fighter, for example. And so we'll try to make more than one, though we can't, because salvage operations only allows us to produce one unit. Our flagship's already in the active system, so we wouldn't really want to produce that. And now this fighter costs 1 resource. Now, technically we are overspending by 1 resource here. And the reason why is because of mirror computing. So by spending the 1 trade good here, we're actually spending 2 in building this fighter. So we'll go ahead and produce it, confirm the overspend. Now we can see in the active system, we got that 1 fighter. And so that's the end of Alice's turn. Right. So the last thing I want to do is just go back to Pillage, and I want to show. I'm just going to do some random events here to pass on Bob's turn, because I want to show how the substep can be queued up. So I want to get back to Alice's turn real quick, just by doing some random things. So we'll get back to Alice's turn. So let's go ahead and take Cornican or Skelion. So we'll get our one of the carriers and bring 2 infantry there. So commit to the planets. So once we establish control, you can see that we're being pinged now that Charlie has to resolve the pillage ability. And the reason why is, like I was saying earlier, and Alice uses the scavenge ability to gain those 2 trade goods. And Alice also has 8 trade goods now, right? So more than 3. And so each instance of scavenge is going to queue up a pillage. So, we can go over here, and maybe we did some sort of agreement where we're only going to agree to pillage 1 of the 2. So we'll pass on like the first one, and then we get queued up again. And this time, we're going to take the resource. I don't know why I'm going to sorry. We're going to use pillage to take that trade good. Now, if we try to take the commodity, they have none, so we got to take a trade good instead. And then the game can go back to its normal flow. So that's just an example of one case where pillage can stack in a queue there. So, believe that covers all the technologies and abilities as well as the flagship. Just going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the video about ambush and how it's been changed in a similar light. Hopefully it's an acceptable solution. I think people were happy with the way Dimensional Splicer was changed. I think this is done in the same light. So, my hope is that it gets received in the same way. Yeah. And with this now, the other thing we have is, of course, achievements are now opened up for the Mentak Coalition. So it's another thing that happens here, this update. And that's now 16 of 17 factions that have been implemented, found their way into the app. So just one more to go. Pretty exciting, I think, with Khazad-dûm's league tournament. Hopefully this update gets in there so that Mentak can be used during the tournament. It's my hope. If not, then maybe in the future. But I know a lot of people were excited at the possibility of seeing the Mentak come in, and now you get them. So enjoy your games, and who knows, maybe when we'll do the yin, it'll be nice to have 17 of 17 factions, but it's nice to get the Mentak in. It's always nice to get a new faction in. But that's where this video is going to end, so stop it here. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.